The European Union has launched a bold new era of digital regulation, sending shockwaves through Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. This is not just another policy update, it's a fundamental shift in how the world's largest digital market intends to govern the internet and the tech giants that shape our daily lives. For years, the EU has watched as American tech companies have grown into global behemoths, often operating with little oversight and setting their own rules. Now, Europe is stepping up to reclaim its digital destiny. This week, the European Commission made headlines by slapping Google with a multi-billion euro fine for anti-competitive practices, sending a clear message that no company, no matter how powerful, is above European law. This isn't the first time the EU has taken on big tech, but the scale and determination are unprecedented. At the same time, X, formerly known as Twitter, is under intense scrutiny for its approach to content moderation. Under the EU's strict new digital laws, platforms must take real responsibility for what happens on their sites, or face serious consequences. The days of tech companies policing themselves are coming to an end. The message is clear: the age of self-regulation for big tech is over. European lawmakers are determined to hold these companies accountable, ensuring that digital spaces are safe, fair, and transparent for all users. For years, Brussels observed as American tech giants amassed unprecedented power, shaping not only markets but also the very fabric of public discourse and democracy. Their influence reached deep into European society, often outpacing local laws and values. Now, the EU is reclaiming control, making it clear that every company, no matter where it's based, must play by Europe's rules if it wants access to its vast market. This is a turning point in the global digital landscape. This is about digital sovereignty. Europe is determined to set the standards for the digital age, ensuring that technology serves people, not the other way around. The EU wants to protect its citizens' rights, foster innovation, and create a fairer digital economy. The Digital Markets Act and Digital Services Act, now in force, represent the most significant overhaul of internet governance in decades. These landmark laws aim to curb the power of tech giants, promote competition, and safeguard users' rights across the continent. With these bold moves, Europe is making a global statement. The digital future will be built on European values: transparency, fairness, and respect for individual rights. The world is watching as Europe leads the way into a new digital era. At the heart of Europe's ongoing tech revolution are two groundbreaking laws: the Digital Markets Act, or DMA, and the Digital Services Act, known as the DSA. These legislative acts represent the European Union's boldest steps yet to reshape the digital landscape, aiming to create a safer, fairer, and more competitive online environment for everyone. The DMA is specifically designed to target so-called gatekeepers, the world's largest tech companies like Google, Meta, and Apple. These giants control access to key digital services and platforms. Under the DMA, they're now required to open up their ecosystems, stop unfairly favoring their own products or services, and ensure that smaller competitors have a real chance to innovate and reach users. Meanwhile, the DSA is all about making the internet a safer place. It holds online platforms accountable for the content they host, especially when it comes to illegal material. The DSA also demands much greater transparency. Platforms must explain how their algorithms work, why users see certain ads, and what steps they take to keep harmful content in check. For the largest and most influential platforms, the rules are even stricter. They must regularly conduct risk assessments to identify potential harms, undergo independent audits to prove compliance, and take proactive steps to mitigate risks to users and society. Together, the DMA and DSA are designed to break the stranglehold of big tech, encourage genuine competition, and ensure that new and smaller players can thrive. This means more choices, better services, and fairer prices for consumers across Europe. For example, the DMA could require Apple to allow alternative app stores on its devices, giving users more freedom to choose where they get their apps. It could also stop Google from automatically ranking its own services above those of competitors, making search results more neutral and trustworthy. The DSA empowers users in new ways, making it much easier to report illegal or harmful content, challenge unfair moderation decisions, and understand why they're being shown specific ads. This increased control helps users protect their privacy and make informed choices online. These changes mark a major shift, from a time when platforms enjoyed broad immunity for user content, to a new era of shared responsibility. The goal is a healthier, more transparent, and more accountable digital space for everyone. With the DMA and DSA, Europe is writing a new rulebook for the digital age, one that aims to rebalance the marketplace, protect users, and set a global standard for digital regulation. Google is the first major target of the EU's new regulatory regime, facing a record-breaking fine for abusing its dominance in ad tech. Regulators say Google unfairly favored its own ad-buying tools, disadvantaging rivals and publishers. The EU is demanding not just money, but structural changes, potentially forcing Google to break up parts of its ad business. The case highlights how Google controls every step of the ad tech supply chain, giving it a powerful advantage. Google argues its integrated approach benefits everyone, but the EU sees it as anti-competitive. This is a crucial test of the Digital Markets Act's power to reshape big tech. The outcome will set a precedent for all other gatekeepers. While Google faces antitrust action, X, formerly Twitter, is under investigation for its content moderation under the DSA. Since Elon Musk's takeover, X/trust and safety staff, raising alarms in Brussels, the EU is probing whether X is doing enough to combat disinformation and illegal content, especially after recent global crises. If found in breach, X could face massive fines or even temporary suspension in Europe. The investigation tests the DSA's ability to hold platforms accountable for societal harms. X claims its user-driven fact-checking is transparent, but regulators remain skeptical. The outcome will shape how all social media platforms handle content in Europe. The European Union's sweeping regulatory crackdown on big tech has sent shockwaves across the Atlantic, rattling policymakers and industry leaders in Washington, D.C. In the U.S. Capitol, officials and lawmakers are voicing growing concerns, arguing that the EU's new digital laws seem to unfairly target American technology giants, putting them at a disadvantage in one of the world's largest markets. The heart of the dispute lies in the Digital Markets Act, or DMA, whose so-called gatekeeper rules are seen by many in Washington as disproportionately affecting US-based firms like Google, Apple, Amazon, and Meta, while sparing most European competitors. This has sparked heated accusations of digital protectionism, with critics claiming the EU is using regulation as a tool to shield its own companies from American competition. In response, American diplomats and trade representatives are actively lobbying their European counterparts, urging them to ensure the rules are implemented fairly and transparently. They warn that overly strict regulations could stifle innovation, slow down technological progress, and even threaten the vital flow of transatlantic trade and investment that underpins both economies. European officials, however, push back against these claims, insisting that the new rules are not about nationality or protectionism, but about ensuring fair competition and reigning in the power of dominant digital platforms. Their message is clear. If a company, regardless of where it's based, dominates the EU market, it must play by EU rules and respect European standards for privacy, competition, and consumer rights. This ongoing standoff highlights a deepening philosophical divide between the two sides of the Atlantic. In the US, tech giants are often seen as national champions, driving economic growth, innovation, and global influence. In Europe, there's a stronger demand for public oversight, accountability, and the protection of citizens' rights in the digital age. The clash is about much more than just hefty fines or compliance costs. At stake is the question of who gets to set the rules for the global internet, and whose values will shape the digital world of tomorrow. Europe is determined to protect its market, its consumers, and its core values of privacy and competition. Meanwhile, the US fears that losing its technological edge could undermine its economic leadership and global standing. The outcome of this transatlantic tech tussle will have far-reaching consequences, shaping the future of digital governance, innovation, and the balance of power in the 21st century. As both sides dig in, the transatlantic relationship is being tested as never before, with the world watching to see who will define the rules of the digital age. The EU's actions against Google and X are just the start. Every major tech company is now under the microscope. Meta must offer ad-free subscriptions and open up messaging apps to rivals. Apple is being forced to allow third-party app stores and alternative payment systems, challenging its walled garden. Amazon faces scrutiny for using marketplace data to compete with sellers, while Microsoft is questioned over bundling Teams with Office. Compliance costs are soaring as tech giants build teams to navigate the new rules. Regular audits, risk assessments, and transparency reports are now mandatory. Failure to comply means fines that can seriously impact profits. The era of move fast and break things is over. Caution and compliance now rule. For European users, the new rules promise more choice and control, like picking your default browser or messaging app. The DSA aims to make the internet safer and more transparent, with easier ways to report illegal content and more clarity on why you see certain ads. Users may soon be able to turn off algorithmic feeds, opting for chronological views. For publishers and small businesses, the DMA could level the playing field, making it easier to compete with tech giants. Advertisers may benefit from more competition and transparency in ad tech. Not all changes will be popular. Some users may find new consent screens intrusive, and over-moderation could threaten free speech. The real impact depends on how these laws are enforced in practice. The EU's regulatory experiment has sparked fierce debate. Supporters say the DMA and DSA rein in big tech's power and create a fairer, more competitive market. Legal experts argue Europe has the right to set its own digital rules, often setting global standards through the Brussels effect. Critics warn that heavy compliance burdens could entrench big companies and stifle startups. Some fear Europe's focus on regulation over innovation could slow technological progress. The American model, they argue, has produced world-changing tech by prioritizing innovation. The central question: can Europe achieve safety and fairness without sacrificing the dynamism that drives the internet? The answer will shape the future of global tech. The EU's crackdown may signal the end of a unified global internet, ushering in a splinternet with different rules in different regions. Europe prioritizes user rights and competition. The US favors innovation and a lighter touch. China enforces state control. Companies may need to create separate products for each market, raising costs and complexity. The dream of a borderless digital world is fading as nations assert their right to regulate. Transatlantic tensions could strain the US-EU alliance, especially if tech policy continues to diverge. The coming months will be critical as courts and regulators shape the next phase. Europe's tech rebellion is a high-stakes bet on a safer, more democratic internet. The world is watching to see if this sparks a global shift or a fractured digital future.